Hey everyone, and welcome to a brand new video. Tonight we have 2 hours of stories. I hope you all enjoy them. If you do, please be sure to drop a like rating. Let's see if we can reach 500 likes on this one. Of course, only drop a like if you feel the video is deserving of it, but it does help promote the content more in the algorithm. Subscribing if you are new is also very much appreciated, as there is content just like this all over this channel. Sit back, do whatever it is that you do to relax, and as always, I hope you all have a great night. I know that immoral doesn't quite cover it. It isn't as though I awoke one morning and decided that was the Thursday I was going to roll out of bed and become a piece of crap. I didn't pull on last year's trainers and make a pact with myself that my bank balance would triple because I was going to become a ghost hunting scam artist, greasing my endless lies with snake oil. But it doesn't matter. Not really. Karma came for me in a big way, and it was deserved. We gained a bit of a niche following online. Nothing to write home about, but we made our money from donations and, of course, the cold hard cash from the people we sucked the life out of. I won't bore with fine details, but we ghost busted 19 homes before we reached the Whistlebees. With each home, we bought more equipment to really add credence to the whole Wrath Wrangler thing. We turned creaky floorboards into demons, water tank leaks into internet views. It was fun, until it wasn't. I'd never met a family quite like them. The others, they were young couples afraid of whistling wind, old singles desperate for validation that their home wasn't heavy with the weight of vengeful spirits. It was easy, muscle memory. But the Whistlebees, God, they were terrified. Young parents and 2 children with their family dog, cowering in the corner when we set up our BS interview. The daughter was so pale she seemed to sink into the walls behind her, face gaunt and eyes haunted. It was her we latched onto as we probed, stifling excited smirks with our palms. "He never leaves," she whispered, staring through us as if we weren't really there. If her eyes glimmered once, they certainly didn't now, lost and soulless as she gazed into the abyss. It was Adam who managed to coax the words from her lips, voice soft as he gently probed. "Who is he? We have plenty of equipment here to find him in whatever corner he's hiding in. We just need to know as much as you can tell us." A wry smile made its way onto her lips as she finally looked at Adam, voice low and deliberate. "You don't need to find him. You'll know where he is. I promise. He walks on the ceiling and crawls down the walls. He'll find you." The young girl's mom spoke suddenly, eyes full of tears. "She didn't used to speak this way," she breathed, gaze darting around the room. "She's so tired. So tired. She doesn't sleep anymore. It doesn't let her." Jonah stood up then, grinning as he clutched his camera for dear life. "Ma'am, don't you worry for a second. You're in the right hands. We'll find out what your visitor wants, and we'll cast him right out of here. You have my word." His words meant nothing, but they didn't need to know that. The fear in their aura was palpable. It was as if they had their own pulsing circle of gravity sucking the life from the room. Their dread did something foreign to me. It made me nervous. In all the nighttime giggling and masquerading in people's homes, I'd never been scared. To do this job was to know that ghosts were as real as fairies and whimsical tales. It was to laugh at the notion. But during that interview, I wasn't laughing. The girl's eyes were black holes, and they looked like they'd sucked her soul out long ago. So with the image of those eyes burned into my retinas, we did what we did best. 11 p.m. rolled around, and with the family booked into a hotel, It was showtime. Show yourself, demon. Jonah lunged through the front door as nighttime blanketed the house in darkness, hauling our masses of equipment through. We didn't need any of it, obviously, but it made people feel as though we were legitimately expelling ghosts from their homes with the flick of a battered crucifix. Adam rolled his eyes, glancing down at the EMF reader in his hand. Bro, come on. Did you see how scared that girl was? I feel a little bad. She was creepy. Jonah chomped on his gum, leaving muddy boot stains as he clambered up on the sofa to stick his camera to the wall. He walks on the ceiling. Dude must have the mother of all headaches. I stayed quiet, chewing my lips as I set up our audio equipment and eyed the tired-looking lump of plastic. The older it looks, the more authentic it appears, Jonah had assured me. And sure, I supposed it did look like it belonged in a 1998 horror game, but it was pretty crap. Not that we'd ever picked up anything on it before. There was the great scare of House 12 when the fridge appeared to hum a lilting tune, but it was just super broken. Right. Jonah jumped downwards, nearly knocking over the coffee table. Plan is Megan Donovan is leaving the house party. You guys didn't want to go at like 2 a.m. I say we wrap up here by 1 a.m. Swing by the party and I'll be her shoulder to cry on because her D-bag boyfriend was mean again all night. Adam scowled as Jonah cackled, but I stayed mute, casting my eyes around the room. I couldn't deny this place felt different somehow. Even with all the lights dancing across the house, there sat an empty, tepid coldness that seemed to seep through the walls. There was no warmth here, no safety. Loving family photos littered the room, but somehow it felt barren, wrong. I'm down to do this quickly at least, Adam muttered, eyes darting around nervously. You guys feel that? Place feels haunted? I finished for him, rolling my eyes at Jonah's guffaws. Alright, if you're both gonna be babies, I'll get started. He stared ominously into our main camera placed across the room, red light blinking towards the sofa we were sitting on. It's time, everyone. As always, first, we'll try to contact the ghost and see if we pick up anything on the microphone or the EMF. Clearing his throat, Adam stole a glance at me. Okay. We're here in your domain, ghost. He tried to project, but I heard the slight crack in his voice. We're here to find out what you want, why you haunt this family. We're here to set you free. I counted down from 6, bulging my eyes as I shrieked, throwing myself backwards. No way, I bellowed, pointing off camera. There's no way. And we did the usual scramble, all of us claiming we saw a photo frame go flying, switching to shaky hand cam footage as Jonah retrieved it from the floor we laid it on earlier. It was rehearsed, but something just felt different. It's hard to describe, but I couldn't shake the feeling a pair of eyes were locking on to me, a horrid gaze burning into my back. The feeling amplified as we pulled out the trusty Ouija board only moments later, laying it on the table and pushing it into frame. I scratched at my arms nervously, trying not to stare at the shadows that seemed to be consuming the room. Alright, Jonah muttered, placing his finger on the planchette. I ask its name. We give it something creepy like Maurice. I'll move it. You guys just stay still. Feel free to run the show on this one, I offered, goosebumps erupting over my skin. Had it gotten colder in here? Adam certainly thought so as he hugged his hoodie tighter, shaking something off as he placed his finger on the planchette with us. The dread was otherworldly, beginning to creep across my skin and begging me to stop. Spirit, Jonah demanded, dramatically eyeing each corner of the room. Make yourself known to us. Show us. Communicate with us. I want to ask what name gives you your power. What is your name, ghost? He waited a fairly believable amount of time before the planchette slowly began to move towards M, but I knew my heart wasn't in my luckless reaction. Jonah would yell at me later, claiming I ruined the entire Ouija shot, but I swore I could see something in my peripheral, just out of view, staring at me. I didn't turn my head, didn't dare. Instead, I gritted my teeth and focused on the board, letting my jaw drop dramatically. M-A-U-R-I. And just like that, the planchette halted. Painfully, almost. Jonah scowled, head snapping to us. Really? Dude, I was nearly finished. You stopped, I argued, wondering if it was a blanket on the bookshelf or a crumpled up man staring dead-eyed at me, as I was beginning to suspect it was. Just do it again, Adam grumbled, and it wasn't usually like this. We didn't fight, we didn't bite. The house felt as though it was draining the life from us, the joy. I felt physically tired, as though being here was soul-sucking, but, as I told myself, ghosts were not real. We were not real. We were opportunistic, and we were leaving at 1 a.m. The planchette moved to M with ease again, and we forced our shock, but with less enthusiasm this time. It seemed even Jonah was struggling now, eyebrows knitted together intensely. M-A-U-R-I-C. And it stopped again, but this time it jerked itself to the left, causing a gasp to leave Adam's lips. Jonah! What is your problem? Jonah cried, looking between us as though we were crazy. Ever since we got in here, you've been acting like a couple of little girls. I swear to God, if Megan... But his words died on his lips because, as we all scowled at one another, the planchette yanked our waiting fingers in the opposite direction, landing on a letter. B. Adam, for Christ. E. The planchette scraped horribly against the Ouija board, and I couldn't tear my eyes away, sitting between the chaos of my friends arguing as each blamed the other, neither paying enough attention to the board. I swallowed, trying to watch for a twitch of the muscles in their fingers, some indication of which one was messing with us. E. But there was none. The fingers were light, barely grazing the object, jerking clumsily around the board. Adam met my eyes, trepidation lining his features. Listen, I just want to get this done and get out of here. If this is you... L. It isn't, I returned. Voice lost in the sound of Jonah growling and wrenching up the planchette, launching it across the room till it hit the wall with a sickening crack. I could only stare in shock at my furious, panting friend, but Adam leapt upwards, throwing his arms up in question. You can't be serious, Jonah. What is wrong with you? And they argued, yelled, threw their arms around, ignored the room. But I couldn't ignore the room. I hadn't been able to ignore it from the second we'd stepped in here, the atmosphere wrapping around my throat from the very first second we dared. And they weren't seeing it, but I was. The blanket in the corner of the room, hanging limply from the figure underneath it. Tall, impossibly tall, shrouded in shadow and with the fabric sagging off it horribly. Shut up, I whispered to the boys next to me, but they didn't stop. They didn't stop as the blanket began to drag closer towards us, the sound of toenails scraping on the floor echoing louder than even my friends. I could see the silhouette underneath it, the darkness that followed, the cold. But they didn't notice, not until a screech sounded, sending our eyes all in the direction of the bleeping monstrosity. Adam cried, shaking his head at the EMF detector, which was flashing a bloody red color, and wailing to attention. I was only distracted momentarily from the carnage, turning around in time to feel a horrid whoosh of air as the blanket fell into a crumpled heap a mere inch from my nose, dropping to my feet. The air was sucked from my lungs as I tumbled backwards, collapsing on the sofa and gasping instead of forming words. Adam looked upon me with concern, but Jonah was done. "Nah," he growled, wincing at the wail of the EMF machine. "Listen, I'm not doing this all over again. Come here. Let's do something with this godforsaken thing. Grab it. Wave it around. Just get up." My eyes were still darting around the room, and only pulled from their trance as a buzzing fly landed on my hand, narrowly avoiding death with the flick of my shaking finger. It woke me up, the voice sounding more strained than I would have liked. "Are you hearing that? It's detecting something. Jonah, I swear to God I saw... faulty microwave. Crappy electrics. I don't know." His voice raised threateningly. "Seriously, stop. Let's leave the room and run in. We'll act shocked about the EMF. We'll walk around a bit. And then we're going. I'm sick of you both." I should have argued. Obviously, I should have argued. But I can't describe the way I felt in that moment. It was as though my fear gave way to denial so quickly that I was already calling myself crazy, reaching desperately for the idea that no, I was seeing things, feeling things, as though I needed to prove to myself that I was crazy, and the horrors my mind was conjuring simply couldn't exist. So I stayed. I stayed as the three of us trudged out of the living room, as we all pulled our clothes tighter and ignored the ice seeping into our skin. I ignored Adam squeezing my shoulder, a sentiment he'd never bothered with before. I ignored my thudding heart as we clutched our cameras, bursting into the living room in our most epic movie yet, ready to contort our faces in horror. But we didn't have to fake it. In the corner was our screaming EMF reader, blinking red as it had been for the last 5 minutes. But the problem was the endless claws wrapped around it, attached to a figure so tall its head brushed the ceiling and black eyes glared upon us. It swayed in the shadows, but I could see its arms, gaunt and as long as its legs, neck cracking awfully as it turned to look at us in an instant. A sick dripping sounded, just loud enough for us to hear, and to this day, I imagine it as thick, crimson blood falling from its fingers onto its dead, curled toes. "Holy," Adam whispered, so I knew in fact I hadn't lost my mind. We ran, of course, scared idiots launching themselves backwards and tripping over everything, legs jelly as we bolted for the front door. I cursed myself for not leaving more quickly, begged for a time machine to have me believe my eyes the first time. We didn't make it. There in the hallway was our 1998 horror movie audio device, except now it was crackling and a rasp sounded from it, too deep and gravelly to be human. Layers of voices sounded at once, so distorted I could barely make them out. "I smell your blood," it rasped, the voice touching me so closely I could practically feel it inside of me. "I'll suck it out of your veins and wear your skin." And then, before there was time to react, every light bulb in the house smashed at once. I know because I heard the shards hit the floor in every room, cried out as pure darkness filled the space, leaving me with no idea where my friends were, and if they even existed anymore. "The door won't open," Adam screeched from my right, audibly jamming the handle. "It won't open." "Where's the crucifix?" Jonah begged, and I could hear the tears in his voice. "Adam, where?" But now it was only footsteps we heard, not slow ones, thudding, loud footsteps, gaining pace and getting louder and louder, till it sounded like something was running at us. But the sound didn't come from the floor. With the most gut-wrenching feeling of horror, I realized it was coming from the ceiling. Oh my God. Adam's voice was below me somewhere, because he'd fallen down into a heap of fear. What is that? What is that? It was deafening. All of it. The wailing EMF detector, the rasp of crackling audio threatening to break all our bones at once, the footsteps slamming to a stop directly above my head, all leading to the moment I looked up, a silent tear disappearing in a slow trickle down my cheek. Its body was contorted horribly as it glowered down from the ceiling, neck cracked at an unnatural angle with bones jutting out everywhere, dead black holes for eyes bored into mine, hell radiating from them in such a way that I was knocked to the floor by the sheer force of it. Rows of razor teeth were pulled back into a horrific grin, stretching much in the way its wings did as they grazed the ceiling, reams of liquid trickling from them onto our heads. Hell, staring from above me. My memory is hazy, and part of me thinks my brain tried to erase the trauma to give myself half a chance to go on with my life. I remember Jonah being lifted into the air with such a guttural wail that I've never heard a sound like it since. Remember the sound of his bones crackling as we ran, making straight for the living room. We threw furniture at the window and ignored the thud of Jonah's lifeless body being hurled at us, hitting the wall with a sick crack. I know we got out. I felt its eyes burning from behind me as our skin snagged on glass, as we sprinted from the hammering rain, screaming for any help we could find. When the paramedics came, most of Jonah's leg had already been eaten, the remains nowhere to be found. He woke up 6 days later, screaming bloody murder, screams he kept up till he was sedated, only reducing to a whimpering wail the third time they woke him up. The bottom floor of the house was destroyed, along with everything in it, our equipment crushed, all evidence of our horrors erased other than the haunted look in Adam's eyes and the nightmares that still wake me at 3 a.m. Wild animals tore the leg from an unconscious Jonah, the local police said. We were just idiots holding a seance in a house, leaving the back door open to all manner of wild animals as we partied ourselves silly. At first, they thought we trashed the house, but the Whistlebees assured the police that no, it simply wasn't the case. This had happened before, they told them. We were just caught in the crossfire. They gave their statement that night, protested our innocence, then packed their bags. They never left. Their little girl went missing that night right before they could flee, her suitcase in her room untouched, and that house became a sad legend on those streets, spoken about in hushed tones. I left town, but something inside it never left me. We don't speak of it, the three of us. We left, and when we meet, that night exists as the elephant in the room. Jonah's scarred stump reminding us that we didn't imagine the entire thing as a collective fever dream. So I left, lived my life, started going to church, took up cricket, and when I hear the sound of thudding footsteps hammering along the ceiling of my hallway in the dead of night, I pull the covers over my head and pray to every god that may or may not exist that I'll live another day. It takes such a long time to pick up all 104 crucifixes off the floor the next morning, but for the life of me, I'll never stop doing it. I work at a Lone Star diner, off the road from Carson City to Reno. Diner name has of course been changed for obvious reasons. More on that later. Why do I work at the Lone Star Diner, off the road from Carson City to Reno? Well, because, kind stranger, my life plans didn't work out. Generally, if you're caught working at a diner past college specifically, one in the middle of nowhere, it might mean that things aren't going so hot. But still, why this diner? Why Lone Star specifically? I'm aware you probably aren't actually asking these questions, but I nonetheless believe they deserve a response. Of all the diners in the world, what makes Lone Star so special is the pay. The pay is great. There are maybe 10 other diners within a 30-minute drive from where I live. Most of them average out to a little over minimum wage. Meanwhile, Lone Star is whipping up a mean $50 an hour. And that hourly rate is due to one single solitary reason, no matter what anyone tells you. Because of him. My first day on the job was fine, more or less. I'd worked customer service before, so I felt like I could run with the strange surprises that came unique to diners. I was able to adapt to the inconsistency of the rules pretty quickly. Unwritten rules like some areas in the restaurant need to be spotless at all times. Others, boss lady couldn't give less of a crap about. Serve customers quickly, but not too quickly. Customers here don't actually like it when you show up too fast. Give them some time to feel the floor under their boots, to miserably stare ahead, and mourn what could have been, diner stuff. They're here because they want to be alone. Pardon the contradiction. Of course, vaguely defined, whispered only by ghosts, rules extended to the cooks as well. If you were somehow, secretly, celebrity chef Marco Pierre White in the flesh, your mandate was to keep your prowess to yourself. Your job is to make the classics as decently as possible. Not bad, but not amazing. Just poor enough to be really good. That's what the customers are here for. As the weeks unfolded, I rose, or I suppose crouched, to the occasion quite well. You want intentional, pinpoint precision mediocrity? You've come to the right person. Most of the patrons just wanted coffee and brunch, brought to them at medium speed, with a semi-predictable cadence of waiter or waitress check-ins afterwards. Done, done, and done. Not one for subtlety. One day I finally decided to ask my boss the question in the middle of a shift. I didn't want to ruin a good thing by doubting it, but screw me if I wasn't a little curious. Not a full look at the gift horse's mouth, more of a skeptical side-eye. Why $50 an hour? She didn't even look up at me from her task at the register, methodically counting out bills. Said it on your first day. You gotta be good at following the rules, and when it's an important rule, you'd better be perfect. High expectations here. I made a face. Right. High expectations. You think I'm joking? No, ma'am. I guess I just... Why did I even speak up? I just think you're running a really cool operation here. Cooler than you might realize. It's still work, but the whole thing seems... fair. Christ, my waffling skills were abysmal. Add that to the list of intentional mediocrity. Booyah. She looked up from her duties and shot me a stern look. I don't run this ship, and following the rules here means that you take care of yourself. I'm sorry? I am your employer, sure, and I'll pay you well to be here, sure. But you should be aware, there is plenty more going on here than just you and this diner. She glanced down at her watch, then sighed. I usually save this speech for the end of the month, but you already caught me halfway through it. So, the Coles notes? If you don't think you have it in you to follow instructions clearly, without protest, and without asking too many questions, then you should leave. Quit. No harm, no foul. A week's worth of pay on the house. The conversation sputtered shortly after that. I tried to find an opening to ask more about what she meant, but she was closed off to the topic moving forward. And you know what? That was fine. If she wanted me to put my head down and just do the work, I could do that. And work I did, and things were good. Mundane small talk with the customers was fun, my coworkers were friendly, and I was getting paid well. I'd found a place to park the failures of my life, a place to build from. It must have been a Saturday, I think, when I first noticed him, an occupied seat in the far corner of the diner. No idea how long he'd been sitting there and waiting, though he certainly looked patient. I had the strange inkling that he'd been left hanging for quite some time, though I couldn't actually remember seeing him enter. Brown corduroy shirt, short hair, mid-50s, it seemed. A reasonably calm smile. Normal-looking dude. I started making my way out from the back and headed towards him. Immediately I felt a tight grip on my arm. It was Melanie, my boss, with a forceful clutch, enough to make me drop my notepad. Her fingers tightened around my forearm, sharply pinching my skin. "Important rules," she said. "What? You remember our chat about rules? Well, this is the most important one. Okay?" "Okay." "That man over there in the corner." She motioned to the man who had caught my attention, sitting upright, hands softly clasped together, coy smile across his face. "You don't go up to him. You don't say a word to him." "But he's a customer." Her hold intensified. She was hurting me, almost as if she was taking out some sort of unseen anger on me. "I'd like to ask you right now to be smart enough to not ask questions and just follow instructions. You don't go to his table. You don't talk to him. You can look at him. You can shout across the room at him if you'd like, though I can't imagine why you'd ever need to do that. But you do not approach him, and you do not take his order." "Or?" A sharp exhale through the nose, a shake of the head, and a glare from my manager. "It's different every time, but it ain't pretty." I watched him from the short distance I'd been afforded. It was hard not to. She did too. Unlike the other customers here, I didn't get a sense that he was here to be alone, to reminisce, or to take part in the comfort ritual of a lackluster Eggs Benedict over rye. Instead, I had the sense that he was just curious, mild-mannered, content but curious. My shift ended not too long after, so I didn't actually get a chance to watch him leave. Regardless, the experience of seeing him and learning about the rule he was connected to left a bizarre, dampening feeling on my mood. I liked my job. I liked coming home and unwinding. I didn't mind being in the middle of nowhere. It felt nice to look up at the empty sky filled with stars, to see them shimmer and shine, and even occasionally shoot across. I made a wish that things in my life would stay simple. I started to get a sense of his cadence. He'd usually show up once a month. The rare times I got to see him, I'd try to squeak in the odd question to my boss. Questions like, who is he? Where does he come from? And has anyone spoken to him? All mechanically met with, I don't know, and if you're scared, you're welcome to quit. Then, as fate would have it, one day boss lady fell incredibly ill. My coworkers and I had to convince her to go home midway through her shift. Her sickness falling, uncomfortably, within the usual 1 to 3 day window at the end of the month when our customer would typically appear. And of course, there he was, right after she went home. To my benefit, the other waiters and waitresses working the rounds were well aware of his presence and knew exactly what to do whenever he arrived. All of them knew to steer clear of him. Nevertheless, driven by a foundational curiosity that I just couldn't shake, I used this opportunity to go for it. I shouted a single thing across the floor, knowing Melanie wasn't there to chide me. "Hello, sir. What brings you here?" I asked him. He turned his head from his fixed position in his seat and put a hand to his ear. Clever. I said, "What brings you here?" I called out again. A few notches louder this time, garnering some odd looks from our Thursday patrons. To my surprise, he spoke back. I'm not sure why I was expecting his voice to carry the tone of some twisted, demented demon. Maybe the fear Melanie had instilled in me. The man sounded exactly how he looked. I'm sorry, dear, he said. I'm afraid I'm not sure what you're saying. Can you come over here and ask me again? Nope, I was good. And I don't mean to be rude about the service, he continued, but it feels as if no one has taken my order for quite some time now. I let the exchange end there, diverting my attention back to the other guests. As always, he'd eventually disappear without fanfare, without the clatter of the entrance bell or any sight or sound of his steps across the diner floor. Our backroom conversations about him remaining dreadfully short while he was there. Just, he's here and he's gone. And the odd, when we really needed to say it, I feel really weird about this. It took me a while to understand where my brazenness to address this strange middle-aged man came from. In truth, I was just afraid. His presence and all of the questions tied to his being at our diner were disrupting this otherwise great arrangement that I felt I had. It seemed right, in the moment, to stand at the very edge of my bravery and say something to him. Of course, now that he was gone, I just felt worse. The next week, I was invited to something pretty interesting at work. I generally have a good amount of visibility into what Melanie, boss lady, does on a daily basis. The only element that remained elusive was her bi-weekly check-in with a particularly sharp-dressed agent-looking fella. There was a pretty consistent presence of state troopers, agents, and similarly uniformed men and women dropping into the diner, though I seldom paid it mind beyond simply noticing it. Midway through wiping down the tables, only an hour or so into my shift, Mel swung by and said, "Hey, want you in the meeting room with the big boss, if you have a few." "The big boss?" Sure, yeah, coming. Just, if you don't mind me asking, who is..." She let her eyes speak her unwritten rules to me. Questions equals generally bad. Thank you for the reminder, ma'am. We maneuvered to a back room and sat at a table. Across from us, already seated, was a man in a sharply tailored suit with a subtle earpiece in, the aforementioned agent. The table was littered with a small, messy stack of notes, papers, and documents. He made it a point to size me up, staring me down uninterrupted, like a deer to headlights. No concern at all about how awkward he was making it for me. Then he turned to Melanie. "How long's she been here?" He asked her in a gruff, western drawl. 6 months, she said. "You trust her?" "I trust her, yes." He let his eyebrows say, "If you say so," then went on with it. "Alright, so apparently you had a visit with the wandering man last week. You," he said, motioning to Melanie, "were out. But you," attention now shifted to me, "weren't. Give me the lowdown." "The wandering man?" The agent caught the confusion in my eyes. "Jesus, you've told this girl nothing, haven't you?" he said to Melanie. "Sir, I know it sounds weird," she said, "but I personally feel as if the man is almost, I don't know, drawn to curiosity. Like maybe the less I say to those not already in the know, the better." "Wandering man," the agent cut her off, "is our nickname for the fellow that sits in the corner of your fine little establishment. Or should I say, the state's fine little establishment." "I'm sorry?" I asked. "That's correct. The state's. Congratulations, ma'am. You're part of a government operation. The wandering man, not just a cutesy little nickname by our legal definition of this tricky little problem, is a phenomena we discovered many years ago. At the time, he'd just walked the desert landscape, chatting up unsuspecting strangers with bizarre questions. Everything fine, all hunky-dory. A little weird, sure, but nothing illegal. However, sometimes things would happen because of him. Bizarre things. Grisly things. I could see Melanie groaning, concerned at the picture being painted. Would this pique my curiosity? Have you guys, taken him in for... I almost wanted to cut off my own stupid question, but he ran with it. Nope. Not because we don't want to, but rather because it might not be safe. The cozy mental image I had held of this diner was starting to fracture. We have reason to believe that he's a visitor, he said. From? I didn't attend another debrief after that. Not because I was barred, mind you. Rather, I just didn't want to know anymore. My gut no longer held curiosity. There was just a low, aching dread there now. The agents and troopers, spaced out and seated amongst the eatery, were now just a glaring reminder of what my dingy diner job really was. The government cavalry would mostly show up around the end of the month window the wandering man was set to arrive in. When he'd appear, they wouldn't do much more than examine him from their distant tables, subtly scribbling notes into notebooks. He'd always act the same. He would just sit there. He wouldn't give them, or us, the diner employees, much to go on. Speaking of employees, I remembered something Melanie told me after my first month of working here, that the worker turnover at this diner was incredibly high. Knowing at the time what everyone got paid, it made absolutely no sense to me. Now, 7 months into the gig, alongside a completely new set of cooks, waiters, and waitresses from when I'd first started, I'd seen firsthand just how true her statement was. None of the leavers claimed as much, but I'm sure the underlying premise of who the diner was really for became subconsciously clear to them during their time here, and it probably didn't sit all too well with them. I stayed, but not because of the pay. I'm actually not sure why I did. We had a new cast of rookie employees now, the ones who understood the vague terms of the situation, just as Melanie, I, and all former employees did, stuck around. Those who couldn't reconcile the situation with their inherent curiosity naturally filtered out. And then there was Malcolm. It was only his first week. He was a keener, mega keener. He'd bulldozed through a giant list of tasks and was already asking for the next batch of work to chew through. Anything he could get ahead of, anything he could step in for, anything he could learn, he was on it. He wanted to be as helpful as humanly possible. I think the salary of the role, for a guy his young age, was just too alluring for him. For our part, Melanie and I tried our best to get him to pace himself. We were both given the spiel now. By this point, we'd more or less perfected it. There are things about the diner that are strange, rules you will have to follow and not think about, rules that are concrete, immutable, and non-negotiable, like gravity. He nodded. At that moment, I really believed he was internalizing my words. And if that doesn't work for you, and if you don't think you can take care of yourself, then you shouldn't work here, I continued. There was always a visceral feeling in my stomach whenever I saw the wandering man in the corner during the same week that we were onboarding new staff. I'm sure Melanie felt it too. On those days, Mel and I would both work the till, and if we saw anyone coming out from the back, we'd stop them with a simple grab of the arm. Malcolm stepped out, and I did just that. A rough grasp of his forearm, just like Melanie had done to me when I'd first started. He recoiled in surprise. "Remember that little chat about rules we just had?" I said. He nodded meekly, as if he was already in trouble. I pointed to the man seated at the far table in the brown corduroy shirt, staring straight ahead, with what I believe at the time no real reason to be here, and I said, "You will not, under any conditions, serve that man. Don't go up to him. Don't talk to him. Pretend he doesn't exist." Malcolm lifted the garbage bag he was holding to his left hand. In my nervousness, I hadn't actually clocked what he was stepping out for. "Just doing garbage duty, ma'am," he said, but understood. And then he left out the front door with his usual swagger. The dumpster wasn't as close as we would have liked, so I appreciated his willingness to take on this duty so soon into his employment. I turned back to observe the wandering man. He had a crowd of agents in attendance that day, scattered about the restaurant. The man wasn't one to speak up often. Today was an interesting exception. "Officers," he said, "if you have any questions, feel free to join me at the table to ask them." The agents around the room reacted mainly with snickers. "Seriously, if you come sit with me, I'll be happy to spill it all. Truly." Even more laughs. But no one bit. And yet he continued pointedly, "I know you're curious. I know you take notes. I know you talk about me. I know you built this establishment for me. I know you..." As I reconciled the fact that this was the most words I'd ever heard him string together in succession, I heard the chime of the bell a door had opened. Malcolm was dusting his hands as he entered through the diner's side door, a door which was situated right beside the table the wandering man was seated at. It all happened so fast, and yet it played out in front of me excruciatingly slowly, as if there was a moment, a single solitary second where I could have stepped in. The wandering man dropped any pretext of an exchange with the agents, stopping his sentence midway and adopting a completely new demeanor. He played the role of a low, miserable, tired man and said, "30 visits, terrible service every time," in a pathetic tone just as Malcolm walked by. Malcolm instinctively plucked a notepad from his chest pocket and turned his head to face the man. "Hey, I got you, Chief. I can have him ring something up for you. What are you?" And then Malcolm froze in place, and the wandering man's expression turned Cheshire cat wide. His neck alternated between tensing and fluttering with what seemed to be undeniable excitement. The man started getting up from the table, and then immediately, both of them were gone. Malcolm and the wanderer had vanished out of existence entirely. The insanity of the moment was interrupted by the coded language I heard blared over a megaphone, nonsensical agent speak that has been seared into my memory forever. "Alert level black. Wandering target has compromised a civilian. I repeat, civilian has been compromised." And that was that. Melanie quit in the days after. She wasn't mad at me. She told me she always knew she'd leave after the 10th disappearance. Why that specific milestone was required, I have no clue. All I could do from that point was continue to work on my commutes home or during lunch breaks. I would look up at the stars and put out the wish that Malcolm be brought back home, back from wherever he'd been taken. The debrief with the agents brought me no solace. The exchange with them was simple and short. "Where was he taken to?" Answered with, "He's gone now." With a perpetual dagger in my soul now, I had only the smallest of silver linings, if you can even call it that. A lesson that I needed to be more watchful, even more diligent, and on days when the wandering man was visiting, the only server at the diner, no exceptions. I knew the agents weren't happy about that. None of them said it to me explicitly, but I could tell that they would learn something new about him every time he whisked someone away after a mistake was made. It was a weird, Darwinian setup they had created. We were a zoo they could use to learn more about a specific animal, a specific entity, a specific visitor. No dice. They'd just have to watch him sit now, or wait for him to do something different. I waited for the 3-day stretch at the end of the month that he usually appears in. Things were quiet up until that point. When he finally showed up, it wasn't what I expected. For the first time ever, I saw the wandering man walk right through the front door, in the dead of night, at the tail end of my shift. I was at the till, paralyzed, as he took step after step to close the distance. And then he was right there, standing in front of me. And I was sure, absolutely sure that I was going to die. He smiled. "Don't worry, I have my own little set of rules I play by," he said. I didn't say a word. This was no man's land right now. "I know you've been curious about me. I've admired it from the moment you first spoke up to address me. Cautious curiosity is a great thing to see in someone, especially in such a reckless species." Please just go, I thought. "I'd like to answer a question about why I'm visiting. I'm sure you'd like to know why I'm here, right?" "I'm not curious anymore. I swear I'm not," I thought. He laughed. "The answer is really painfully simple. This little game, this little charade I'm playing, it is just so unbelievably fun. Please don't kill me. Please." I continued to think. "You truly have a wonderful planet. I will return again soon. Promise. Give me a month, maybe 2 this time." A sincere, kind smile delivered with kind eyes. "I'll come back with a new game." And then he was gone. It took me a minute to realize that there was a cake box sitting on the counter beside me. Maybe it was there the whole time he was speaking to me. Maybe it materialized right after he left. I opened the box to find Malcolm's severed head, a blank expression on his face, sitting on a bed of poorly and confusingly organized flowers, almost as if there was an intention to create a floral arrangement, but no understanding of what something like that would look like. On top of the horrific display, written in an almost childlike writing, was a note that read, "I brought him back, just like you wished." The worst thing about being trapped at a diner, in the middle of nowhere, is that you realize that there really is nowhere else to run to. Every single part of our planet is blanketed by stars, by open sky. Someone could drop in anytime. I'm writing this in the beginning of May 2024. A few days from now, I won't be able to do so, I fear. In the vague hope of finding someone in the width of the internet who can help me out, I'll try to retell the events that have led to this moment in as much detail as possible. I need to find a way to stop them. The authors of this magazine, the entity that is destroying my life, or whatever else is responsible for these terrible articles. First issue, February 2024. Even though the knocking on my door was very soft, it managed to find its way into my dreams and I slowly woke up. On that Sunday in January, I wasn't quite sure if I actually heard someone knock, or if my brain had just made up the sound. Back then, I don't know that this sound would cause me a lot of shivers in the future. I rolled out of bed and slowly made my way to the front door. No one there. Just as I was about to turn around and go back to bed, I saw something lying in front of me. A magazine. The shiny front cover read, "Embrace Your Life." Why would someone just drop it on my porch and then leave? I suppose that this was a newsletter published by a religious group. but shouldn't they use their chance and try to talk to me? On second guess, it could also just be a free magazine full of ads. This still wouldn't explain why the person delivering it knocked, but what did I know? I stopped speculating, grabbed the magazine, and went back inside. I hopped back into bed and started to read. After all, it was a Sunday, and I didn't have anything else to do. The magazine seemed to center around lifestyle, beauty, food, nothing you've never seen before. While skimming through it, I was surprised that I couldn't find any ads. Who had published this? I read a few headlines which didn't really spark my interest, when I suddenly saw something that caught my eye. Stressed at the office, counteract bullying, and finally start making friends at work. If only it was that easy, I thought to myself. For half a year I had been working a more or less boring office job close to my home. At first it wasn't so bad. Most of my coworkers were friendly, but after a while, a group of women in their mid-30s seemingly had chosen me as their target. I really couldn't figure out what I did wrong. Maybe I had accidentally off-ended one of them. Whatever the reason, they started to spread cruel little lies about me. Apparently I had an affair. I never washed my hands after using the bathroom and was overall a terrible human being. The rumors had evolved, and a few weeks later, I started having a really tough time on the job. I felt as if everyone was eyeing me constantly, while avoiding talking to me as best as possible. Even though I felt as if there was no real solution to my problem, I was a little intrigued by the article. I started to read. Do you know that awful feeling of loneliness at the office? As you enter the break room, everyone suddenly remembers that they really have to get back to work. Your mails asking for support usually go unanswered. Yes, I know that feeling. And now? Keep reading and stick to our tips to improve your life on the job. Our authors have extensive experience in improving the lives of former victims of bullying. I was a little intrigued, and continued. First, you need to find the root of your problem. It usually isn't the case that everyone simply doesn't like you. There are a few people who are responsible for bad-mouthing you. Well, yeah, I know that. I know who that is. It is therefore important to connect to these coworkers who are not involved in spreading rumors about you. Use the opportunity for small talk, as one of them has to ask you for help. For this to happen, you'll need to frequent the communal work areas a bit more, especially on Tuesdays. As soon as you've established a little conversation, use your social skills and show interest in your coworker as a person. Ask questions about their family, their kids. You'll see how easily they'll start to like you. Now you can use your base and forge further connections. The little article continued for a bit and then ended with a good luck. Wasn't all of that a bit specific? Not every office worker had the option to choose between personal and communal workspaces, and for all of that to work out, someone would have to feel the need to ask for my help in the first place. Weird. I read on for a few more minutes, then got up, threw the magazine into the trash, and went on about my day. By the next Tuesday, I had basically forgotten about the magazine. As I got to work, I saw that there were some technicians replacing a heater close to my desk. My boss asked me if I would be okay with using the communal workspaces for that day. I didn't really have a choice, so I grabbed my laptop and went upstairs. I typed a few emails when I suddenly heard someone call my name. Angie. It was Steve, a nice guy from the IT department, who sadly hadn't been talking to me since the stupid women had started their anti-Angie campaign a few months back. Hey Angie, I know we haven't been talking much, but I was wondering if you could help me out real quick. Do you have a moment? Yeah, sure. What do you need? I've just reconfigured some details on our webpage. I'd like to see how it looks on different devices. Could you quickly open the page on your laptop and maybe your phone as well? I did what he had asked. Steve seemed happy with the formatting of the page. He thanked me and was just about to leave again when I spoke up. I went all in. This was such a weird coincidence. I just had to try it. Hey Steve, I was wondering, how are your kids doing? Oh, you mean because of the surgery? Yeah, sure, the surgery, I replied confused. Well, Georgie is a lot better today. It went pretty well, and Sabrina is coping with it much better than I thought. It's not that easy, but I think we have overcome the worst. That sounds great. I'm happy that he's better. I didn't really know what happened to Georgie, but Steve's tone told me that the surgery had been something that was stressing him out a lot. Honestly, Angie, it means a lot that you show interest in them. Some people in this office only care about themselves, it seems. But I need to get back to my computer. I'll have lunch in an hour. It would be nice to chat some more in the break room then. He smiled at me and left. I sat in front of my laptop and was practically beaming. It was so good to finally talk to someone who seemed genuinely friendly. My day went on ridiculously positive. In the break room, I soon learned that the 3 bullies, I'll just call them the Karens, had called in sick today. Apparently they had some stomach issues. I continued to talk to Steve, who also introduced me to a new apprentice who was equally nice. They even asked me to have a beer after work, but I had to decline. My social battery was completely drained and confused by all the conversation I had held that day. Even as I entered my home, I was still grinning. This magazine surely was something. I took it out of the trash, put it on the counter, and happily patted it. Great advice, I must say. Later, as I sat on the couch, I read some more. I saw an article that pitched starfruit as a superfood for clean skin. I immediately noted it on my shopping list. It was worth a try. I went to bed happily. A few days went by, and it seemed as if the gods, if there were any, decided to start treating me as their personal favorite. I felt healthy, my skin cleared up, my time at work became bearable, pleasant even. I had been talking to a few more people, of which some even excused themselves for blindly believing the stupid rumors the Karens had spread about me. They had recovered from their sickness, but upon their return, no one really bothered to listen to their gossip. Even though I had read the magazine a few times by then, I couldn't manage to throw it away. I saw it as a kind of good luck charm and kept it on my couch. Another week passed. As I was vacuuming, it accidentally fell to the floor. A card made out of thick, structured paper fell out. Dear reader, are you interested in more content from our professional lifestyle authors? Subscribe and receive a new issue of Embrace Your Life every month. All of that for an unbeatable price. Simply fill out your address and send this card back to us. See you with the next issue. I was interested. Of course, usually I never gave in to money-wasting subscriptions, this one even being an outdated paper medium. But it was intriguing. I couldn't really figure out the payment method, but I assumed they would send me a bill along with the next issue of the magazine. I quickly filled in my address information and threw the card into a postbox the next day. Second issue, March 2024. Even though the first issue I had received appeared on my doorstep on a Sunday, I didn't really expect the second one to do so as well. Was it a special delivery company that worked on weekends? Probably a pricey service, I thought. By the time I heard the soft knocking, I was in the middle of preparing breakfast. I had changed my morning routine up a bit, got up earlier and ate a healthy breakfast, as I was unusually motivated to start my days. It was the 25th of February, the last Sunday of the month. As I picked up the new issue of Embrace Your Life, I felt a warm feeling in my stomach. What a fitting title, I thought to myself. I really feel like I'm embracing my life for the first time in years. On the cover was a beautiful woman holding a fancy heart-shaped cake. Receipts that will make everyone fall in love, the subheading read. I really wasn't skilled at baking. Maybe this issue wasn't for me after all. I opened the front page. How to get your crush to only have eyes for you. A receipt that will immediately spark love in his stomach. This sounds as if it was targeted at 14-year-olds, I thought. And also, isn't it a bit conservative to automatically assume that my crush is a he? All of this didn't really appeal to me. My thoughts drifted away. To be honest, I myself had developed quite a crush at that time. I again started to think about Steve, as I had done many times in the last weeks. He was really amazing, but not only did he have 2 kids, but also a wife. She was quite nice. I had chatted to her 2 times by now, as she sometimes picked up Steve after work. But still, I wouldn't have been mad if he had turned out to be a single dad. I tried to distract myself. These thoughts about Steve felt somewhat wrong and continued. An easy-to-make cake with only 7 ingredients, which you probably already have at home. Try it out. Almonds are the key. I actually did have all of the ingredients at home. Coincidentally, I had just bought almonds the day before. I had an unusual craving for them. Maybe this could be the start of my baking career. I giggled to myself. Worst case would be me losing a few of my almonds. I decided to give it a shot. Of course, I didn't plan to present the cake to Steve only. That would have been weird. I was planning to simply put it in the break room. My coworkers surely wouldn't mind some free cake. The receipt was ridiculously easy to follow. A little suspicious. I cut off a tiny piece of the cake for myself to try it after it had cooled down a bit. I was really surprised. Not to brag, but this was the best cake I ever had in my life. At this point, I was actually a bit excited to see what my coworkers would say as they would taste it. On Monday, I brought the cake to work and placed it in the break room. After 4 hours of work, I came back, ready to receive praise for my amazing baking skills. Only a few crumbs were left on the plate. Angie, did you make this? Wow, you should have made 2. This is just amazing, thank you. Could you bring the receipt tomorrow? Needless to say, everyone was a big fan. I was a bit proud even though I had just followed the instructions of a simple 20-minute recipe. Steve suddenly approached me. This is really good. I didn't know you were such a talented baker, Angie. Then his tone changed a little. Maybe you could teach me sometime. Did he just wink at me? This was just ridiculous. I couldn't help but feel excited about his words, even though they sounded like the script of a bad rom-com. My smile faded within a second as I suddenly heard someone scream. Help, she can't breathe. I think she can't breathe anymore. Someone please do something. I rushed to the next room where the screaming came from. Karen, yes, one of the Karens was ironically actually named Karen, lay on the floor. Her face started to turn blue. Our boss sent us all home early after the ambulance had taken Karen away. They couldn't do anything for her anymore. It turned out that she had a severe allergic reaction to almonds, which she apparently didn't know of. Back home, I just lay on my couch. I couldn't really cry, but I felt terrible. It had been my fault, I was sure. This terrible magazine. I swiped off the desk. Surprised, I noted that another thick gray card fell out of it. Dear Angie, thank you so much for your subscription. We will deliver the upcoming 3 issues of Embrace Your Life right to your door. Get ready for a whole new life. My name seemed to have been filled in by hand. For a moment, I wondered who wrote it, but that thought quickly escaped my mind. I was devastated. At my current state of desperation, there was nothing I wanted less than to see more of this magazine. I crumpled up the card and pushed it and the magazine itself under the couch. Sometime later I fell asleep. Abruptly I was woken up by my ringtone. I had received a message from Steve. He had never contacted me like that before. The message read, "Hey, I'd like to talk to you. What we've witnessed today upset me so much. Maybe have a glass of wine together." I replied, "Sure." I was exhausted and sad, but it felt somehow right to talk. Steve and I spoke for a few hours. While we did so, I noticed how the distance between our two seats on my couch became smaller and smaller. What can I say? One thing led to another, and as Steve finally went home at 2 a.m., I was simply confused. What was happening with my life? There was so much change in so little time. I couldn't really comprehend it. I didn't sleep that night. The following days at the office were strangely quiet. I met Steve in private a few more times in the afternoon. 2 weeks went by. In the middle of March, I nearly slipped and fell after I had stepped on a small gray card that lay on my porch. I picked it up. "Dear Angie, we hope that you enjoy the improvements initiated. Don't be afraid to follow our advice. It will surely pay out." The message was handwritten, a type of handwriting I had seen before. It wasn't hard to put two and two together. It was the same as on my "Thanks for your subscription" card that had been laying under my couch for weeks. I noticed that I had goosebumps all over my body. Third issue, April 2024. The third issue was left on my porch on the 31st of March. As I heard the soft knocking, I ran to the door. There was nobody there. I had a bad feeling. Before throwing the issue in the trash can, I didn't even look at the headings. I copied the publishing information. I had never before heard about this company, Better You Publishing. They seemed to be located in another state. Later that day, I wrote a short letter. "Dear Sir/Madame, I would like to cancel my subscription of the magazine Embrace Your Life with immediate effect. Please do not send me any further issues. Thank you." I signed it and then went to the post office. It seemed strange to me at the time that there was only this address. No phone number, no email. Who doesn't have an email address in 2024? Days went by, and I heard nothing more from the company. My affair with Steve went on. It felt wrong, but I couldn't really help it. It was the Wednesday in the second week of April that I saw Steve's wife in his car pulling up into a parking space outside our office. The other times she had picked him up, she had been driving her own car. She slammed the door shut and ran into the office. One of my coworkers jokingly said, "Man, looks like Steve is in for some trouble." He didn't know how right he was. Steve's wife grabbed the sleeve of his shirt and pulled him outside of the office. The attempt at being discreet about their argument failed, as we all could hear them shout in the parking lot. I saw her holding up something green into his face. What was that? I realized it. My hair was down. Most days I wore it in a low ponytail, usually fixed with a scrunchie. My favorite green scrunchie. The scrunchie that Steve's wife had now found on the back seat of his car. As I went home that evening, I thought it wouldn't be possible to feel any worse. I was very wrong. Steve didn't come to work the next few days. As I didn't see him the following Monday, I decided to finally text him. I saw that he had received my messages, but there was no answer. That night at 2 a.m., my phone rang. "Angie, I won't be coming into work the next days. I have to..." Silence. Then he hung up. An hour later I received a text. "I have to prepare her funeral." I couldn't breathe. I sat in silence for hours. The next day Steve called again and explained what I had already assumed. His wife had hung herself the night after confronting him in the parking lot. She knew of us. It was my fault. After repeating this sentence in my head for hours, another thought silently joined. It was the fault of this magazine. I wanted to scream, cry, destroy something. I ran outside, grabbed the magazine from the trash, and started ripping it into little pieces. It felt therapeutic until I saw it. Maybe their breakup is just what you need. This issue's feature heading I read. Many women worry more about the luck of others than their own. It is time to focus on your luck. Don't wait for him to run towards you and leave his wife by himself. You can push things into the right direction by following a few simple steps. 1. Leave a piece of clothing or accessory in his car for her to find. I read it over and over. I had received this issue on the 31st of March. I hadn't even looked at it. I had lost my scrunchie in Steve's car on the 9th of April. Even as I am writing this weeks later, I cannot put into words how I felt upon reading this. Just so scared. I don't know what to do. Later I found myself in Steve's arms, the only place I felt somewhat safe in. For the rest of April I stayed at Steve's place. I get along well with his kids, but they were missing their mom terribly. Even though I was eaten up by guilt, I stayed in their home. I was so terribly afraid to find another magazine in front of the door of my house. It was the 28th of April when I heard the soft knocking last. I was having breakfast with his children in Steve's home. 4th issue, May 2024. I will now get back to the start of my story. As I have said, I don't have much time left. Today is the 7th of May. If I don't find a way to stop this magazine's authors, or its power, or whatever it is, I will end my own life soon. I won't leave you in the dark about the latest issue's main article. Its heading reads, "You want your man just for yourself? Remove his distracting children from your life in just 3 easy steps." Me and Leela always carved dozens of jack-o'-lanterns every October, so they'd absolutely saturate our lawn on Halloween night. It was our thing. But looking back on it, now that I've lost her, I just feel bad for the pumpkins. I almost relate to them somehow. The way they were carved up, had everything of substance inside of them torn out, and left as hollow, rotting shells with forced smiles. Needless to say, I didn't cope with her death well. I didn't want to cope with it. I wanted the world to drown in the black sludge of my grief. I loathed the people I saw going about their lives, unaware that the world had already ended the moment Leela died. The earth shouldn't keep spinning. Life shouldn't go on. Not without her. Even my relatives bringing me along on a trip to Kauai only made it worse. The most gorgeous place on earth, and it made me sick with hatred. Nothing that beautiful deserved to exist if Leela wasn't ever going to see it. It wasn't fair. I thought I'd never enjoy or care about anything again. Then I discovered media preservation. It started with taking some of Leela's old VHS tapes to a video repair place to fix some issues with the footage before it's digitized. The job fascinated me. In a universe based on entropy, where everything inevitably fades away and is forgotten, restoring something lost is like snatching it from the jaws of death, right? Like flipping the bird to the universe and its so-called natural order. People die, but information doesn't have to. Now it doesn't matter how small, be it some god-awful plug-and-play licensed game, or a serial commercial from the 80s. It's my mission to recover it in as high a quality as I'm able, and make sure it's freely available online for as long as possible. A couple weeks ago, I came across a big haul. 4 boxes of old VHS tapes offered up on eBay for dirt cheap. Most of the tapes were just recordings of Cheers episodes, already preserved in higher qualities, but one Maxell E240 caught my interest. First of all, I'd never seen one so melted. Sure, sometimes they were left in an attic too long, and the colors and audio started to degrade, but this one looked like it had survived a house fire. It was covered in soot and the smell of smoke, and had the overall shape of a chocolate bar left out in the sun a little too long. Second was the label, which read in neat Sharpie, Episode 4,679,329, March 8th, 2035. The casing was so disfigured, I had to bust it apart just to pull out the tapes and re-spool them in a fresh cassette. I tried to iron out the creases in the tape as best I could, but I had no illusions about it accomplishing much. The mylar surface had been irreparably warped in places by whatever fire had half melted the thing. Imagine my despair at the sight of that dreaded no signal. I could clearly see the tape wasn't blank, yet no amount of adjusting the tracking or trying different TVs or VCRs accomplished anything. Just as I was about to give up though, the thing just suddenly started playing properly at the exact instant the clock struck 3 a.m., as if it had only now decided to work. My all-nighter had paid off. I didn't dwell on the fact that this miracle fix had been impossible. If I'd had any sense, I'd have torn the horrid thing out of my VCR and buried it beneath holy ground. Instead, fool I was, I sat down and watched. At first, the thing seemed unwatchable. The audio was so distorted that the show's theme song emerged as a low, crackling, staticky wail that made my head throb, and the logo was completely indistinguishable through the flickering and interference. I thought it was a lost cause for a moment, but then a figure appeared and cleared away the static, like Moses parting the Red Sea. It was the sight of the show's host that hooked me. He was just perfect. Perfect in every way. I knew it just looking at him. Infinitely handsome and likable and charismatic, and he always said the exact perfect thing. The only issue is, I don't remember a single thing about him now, in the same way you can't remember a dream that seemed so clear to you while you were experiencing it. He just appears in my memory as this abstract blur in a sharp suit. Yet at the time, I was awestruck, even before he said a single word. I can't even remember a word he said. It was like he was speaking another language, one I felt as opposed to heard. I'll try and transcribe it as best as I can into words, but know that it's only a pathetic imitation. For another night of laughs, prizes, and fun for the whole family, with your hosts. I noticed that the audio and visual distortion seemed to suddenly intensify the instant he said his name, rendering it completely illegible. Idiot I was, I figured that was a coincidence. Tonight is a night of celebration, folks, because thanks to the support of loyal viewers like you, we have just been approved for, get this, 200,000 more seasons. The live studio audience went wild with applause. I put that in scare quotes because, as far as I could tell, besides the host, the studio seemed completely empty, as if he was standing on a plain white stage that extended outwards into infinite darkness on all sides. For those just joining us, the game here is simple. He explained that this was some sort of a trivia show. Every time a guest got an answer wrong, it brought them a little closer to some sort of unspecified punishment, and if they got it right, he smirked. Well, they get to delay the inevitable. I wondered what he meant by inevitable. I didn't have to wonder long. The host gestured to a curtain that hadn't been there moments ago, which raised to reveal a middle-aged man. You know the type. Bushy mustache, gray hair, round-rimmed glasses. Kind of guy you'd have doing your plumbing. He couldn't look any more out of place stood up and restrained in that. What is that? I recognized that metal coffin-looking thing from a medieval torture museum I went to once. The Iron Maiden. The lid hung open, countless, long, needle-like blades poking inwards, threatened to poke a million new holes in him if it was shut. His situation was not lost on him. Where am I? What is this? Oh, lucky guess, the host joked, more canned laughter. I know you always loved watching those trivia shows, Malcolm. Weren't you always sitting there, grinding your teeth, seething that it wasn't fair, that you should be the one up on stage winning big? The man paused. Even he seemed mesmerized by the unreal perfection of the host before him. This is a game show? All you have to do is answer a few questions. Think you can handle that, Malcolm? He pulled out a cue card without waiting for an answer. And our first question. What were you doing the night of February 18th, 1998? The man seemed baffled. Just sat on my couch watching the NFL, I think. I'm not sure how I'm supposed to remember. He let out a startled squeal as a horrid buzzer sounded. On cue, the lid slid a third of the way closed, making him flinch. Oh, I'm afraid that's the wrong answer, Frank. But you know what? I'll give you one more chance. What were you? Following a girl home, the man cried out. From the bar. There, are you happy? Correct. The canned audience began cheering. Such honesty. Now, our second question. Just what were you carrying while you followed her? He hesitated for a little too long. And then the buzzer sounded again, and the lid slid so near to closing that its blades began poking uncomfortably against his skin. He tried to press himself against the back of the maiden as well as his restraints would allow. Jesus, okay. A knife. A knife. Aw, if only you'd said that just a second earlier. Another big question. Our third question. Why Malcolm? Why did you do it? That set Malcolm off. He started thrashing, clawing, screaming. Let me out of this thing, you maniac. You can't do this to me. Do you know who I am? Is this some sort of sick joke? My lawyers will have your head for this, you... And then the buzzer. All of a sudden, the lid slammed shut full force, and the man was utterly silenced save for an unnatural drawn-out wheeze. Another wrong answer, Malcolm. I'm afraid I was looking for her, because if I can't have her, no one can. I admit it. I laughed. Out of shock more than anything. How was this allowed on TV? I took it as some sort of dark comedy show, and it was kind of satisfying to see that freaky character get his comeuppance. Still, there was something unnerving to me, seeing the man's eyes through the openings in the maiden, wide and red and terrified. They just looked a little too real. But the maiden disappeared as quickly as it came, before I could dwell on it too much. Oh, envy. Definitely one of my favorite sins. More laughter. Stay tuned, folks. We've still got a night of fun and games in store for you. But first, how's about a word from our sponsors? Cut to a corporate logo, which I again couldn't recognize. This segment was made possible by Buer Health, which has recently announced a brilliant new initiative to protect our citizens from skin cancer by removing their skin completely. The camera cut to a massive industrial building, resembling a solid concrete cube around 50 meters in width and height. Its surface bore arcane symbols etched using carvings of wailing, tormented faces. The host would occasionally be rendered inaudible by a deafening metallic scraping from within, though he didn't seem to notice. The only protrusion from the building's cubic shape was a single smokestack, belching a scarlet red smoke into the atmosphere. A queue of gaunt figures waited at the entrance, herded and coerced by their grim overseers, and there were no words to describe the procession of scarlet ghouls limping out of the building's other end. Owing to the non-linearity of time, the brand new grand skin-peeling machine has spontaneously appeared several years before construction deadlines, and indeed, before it was even conceived of by anyone in our timeline. People have rushed all the way from Molly Bolge just to try this miracle of technology out on opening day, and so far, the reviews have been stellar. He shoved his microphone in the face of a shambling thing that could only scarcely be called a human. Tatters of flesh clung to its exposed musculature, blowing in the wind. Its eyes were the only hint of color in that sea of bloody red, and they were wide, white, and terrified. The thing screamed and wailed for as long as it could before the last tendons connecting its jaw to its face snapped, and it was left to choke and gurgle. An amazing wail. The results speak for themselves, folks. The grand skin-peeling machine is a hit. So far, I was still laughing along and having a good time. The sight of the next guest, however, started making me nervous. It was an old lady. She couldn't be a day younger than 60, the sort of sweet elderly woman who in a gist world would be cooking chocolate chip cookies for her grandchildren in a comfy cottage somewhere. But here she was, tied to a metal chair, eyes wide, shaking like a leaf. Unlike the last contestant, she seemed to know exactly what was happening. In exchange for our loving endorsement, they've agreed to loan us one of their star employees. Ladies and gentlemen, put your hands together for the Lachisma. Something slunk from the darkness far behind her. Or perhaps it'd be more apt to say that the darkness birthed it whole cloth. It was like a living shadow, and it took my eyes a moment to register what I was seeing. How do I even begin describing this creature? I could say it looked almost human, or at least like something that may have been human long ago. Or I could start with its skin, which was all black and shiny as latex and seemingly smooth on first glance. But if you looked closer, you'd realize it was covered in a million tiny reptilian scales, almost like a shark. Its head was a bald man's, utterly devoid of any distinguishing features, like the basic stock template for a human being. It was notable only for a complete lack of pupils and irises, its eyes a pure white. Its body defied basic biology in so many key ways. I had to stare at it for what felt like an eternity just to wrap my mind around its physiology. It was at least 5 or 6 meters long by my estimate, composed of multiple human torsos stacked one on top of the other like segments of a centipede, each melding with the ones around it at the waist and shoulders. Each torso sported a pair of short, stubby arms that propelled it with terrifying grace. It ended with a pair of human legs perpetually bent on their knees. Beneath a tail that looked more like a coccyx was poking free from its body. The old lass could clearly hear it, and kept futilely trying to turn her head around enough to get a peek at what stood behind her. I mouthed uselessly, You don't want to know." "Glad you could join us again, Miss Withersby. Judging by our ratings last week, You seem to have been a fan favorite. Her voice was so soft, I could barely hear it below the static. Oh God, please. Why won't you people let me go? I've told you. I've never done anything. Never hurt anybody. There must be some sort of... He waved a hand over her, and it seemed to forcefully snap her mouth shut. Please, Miss Withersby, save your breath for our questions. Another cue card. Your first question, my friend. Where did you and your husband buy your first home? She had to think about it for a long time. Eventually she cried out. Alabama. Tuscaloosa, Alabama. Ding, ding, ding. Why, you're already doing better than our first contestant. Next question. What breed of dog was your childhood pet? She had a pained look on her face as she thought. Eventually, a timer started ticking down. It wasn't visible, so it wasn't clear how much time she had left exactly. But the sound it made got more shrill and high-pitched with every second. Miss Withersby, need I remind you that we have a time limit on this show? A tear ran down her cheek. I keep telling you people, I don't know. I have dementia. I can't remember, please. The buzzer again. I'm afraid that was the wrong answer. Laquisma. The old lady shuddered at the sounds of hundreds of feet drawing a little closer to her. Now, your first grandchild, what did he look like? What color were his eyes? His hair? She was crying harder now, like it hurt her that she couldn't remember something so dear to her. I told you I can't remember. Why are you doing this to me? If you don't remember them, why would they remember you? The host mocked as the buzzer sounded, and the beast drew a little closer. Really, do you believe they even still think about you? Or do you think they're glad that the old bag of bones isn't there sucking up their inheritance? This went on for... God, it could have been an hour. I was glued to the screen all the while, frozen with terror, praying for this nightmare to just end, for her to make it out okay somehow. He pored over every little detail of the life she lived and the people she loved, delighting in how little of it she could still recall. And the thing grew closer and closer, until she finally felt multiple pairs of hands resting upon her shoulders. The thing was looming over her now, and a long black tongue a few feet in length emerged from its mouth and ran trails of dark saliva over the back of her head. She looked broken down, eyes raw from crying, and I could tell by the dampness of her dress that she'd wet herself. Now, Miss Withersby, our time here has been fun, but I do believe it is time for our final question. Tell me, what is the name of your only son? She couldn't even answer anymore. She just stared ahead like her mind was a million miles away. He cackled as the buzzer sounded one final time and threw his cue cards aside. Thank you for playing, Miss Withersby. Better luck next time. I would say the thing unhinged its jaw like a snake, but that'd be an understatement. The way the thing's face malformed and wrinkled and stretched as it opened its maw, it no longer looked even remotely human. Its jaws must have parted at least 30 centimeters apart, revealing a second pair of jaws that lashed out and gripped the woman's skull, pulling her headlong into the darkness. I could hear bones crunching and snapping as its throat constricted down around her body. Peristaltic muscles compacting her into a meat slurry, bit by bit. Yet she just wouldn't die. Even as her skull and upper body were already crushed and compacted, organs and muscles pressed into mulch, she still kicked her legs, twitched her fingers, let out a gurgling that must have been some attempt at screaming. She was squirming even as the beast snapped its jaw shut around the last of her, condemning her to whatever torments awaited her inside the creature. And all the while, that horrible laughter. Don't worry, folks. She'll be back next week. And the next. And the next. Needless to say, I wasn't having fun anymore. In fact, I had to turn away and fight the urge to throw up. I stood about to turn the TV off and... Don't touch that dial now. I froze. There was something chilling about the way he said that, staring right into the screen as if reacting to what I was doing. I hated the grin on his face. The real show is just beginning. And with the barely restrained excitement of a child on Christmas morning, he yanked back another curtain, and I recognized everything. I recognized that crappy bootleg knockoff Always Sunny in Philadelphia jacket that was so gaudy and terrible it instantly became her favorite thing in her wardrobe. I recognized those subtle hints of slight acne she disguised as fake freckles. I recognized the way her gray eyes would remind me of those overcast mornings at the beach at Hilton Head, and pointing out all the cannonball jellyfish washed up on the sands. I recognized that tattoo of the name Rocky. How I'd held her all night long as she cried into my shirts after her childhood cat had died. It was Leela. I shuddered, gasped, fell from my seat as if I'd been punched in the stomach and the air had been knocked out of me. I couldn't breathe. This couldn't be real. I was dreaming right now. I must be. I just had to wake up. But I couldn't wake up. Nothing I could do dispelled the sight of her curled up in that thing. That bronze statue of a bull, horns jutting on either side of a head that roaring silently up at the heavens, all while the love of my life was locked in its hollowed out belly, visible only through a pane of glass. I could hear her cry out in shock at where she'd found herself, and every whimper felt like it drove a knife through my chest. The host soaked in that moment. It was ecstasy for him, the suffering of it all. He stared dead into the camera like he was looking right at me as she called, "What is this? Where am I?" Why, I have good news, my dear Leela. You're exactly where every American dreams of being. You're on TV. He pointed to the camera. And we have a very special guest in the audience tonight. Your very own beloved Jackson. I shuddered hearing my own name ooze from his fetid lips. His facade of perfection was slipping, and there was something so profoundly ugly beneath it. Her eyes snapped to the camera, confused, despairing. "Jackson? Baby? What's happening? What is this?" "I don't know," I thought, gripping the sides of the TV so hard my knuckles turned white. "But I'm going to get you out of there, baby. I'm going to find whoever did this, and I'm going to bury them all so far beneath that studio that they'll never..." "I'm afraid Jackson hasn't joined us quite yet, my dear. But if you truly love him, surely you'll give him a show to remember, won't you?" He taunted her. "All I want, after all, is to ask you a few questions. In fact, I'll offer you a special deal. Get even a single answer right, and I'll let you go free. But get one wrong, and, well..." On cue, a fire was lit beneath her, small, smoldering for now, but she whimpered as she noticed the heat. We both realized in that instant what this was. By now I was screaming things I can't repeat here, and slamming my hands against the TV screen as if I could reach through and save her. She bit her lip and acquiesced. Not like she had any room to argue. The host grinned and readied a cue card. "Your first question. Where are you, Leela?" I don't know. How am I supposed to know? You do know, Leela. You know exactly where you are. He smirked at her. Here's a free hint. What's the last thing you remember before you woke up here? She thought about it and choked back a sob, visibly shaking as the realization slowly settled in. But why? I... The horrible wail of the buzzer cut her off. Oh, too bad. I'm afraid you've run out of time. Seemingly as if on its own, the fire doubled in size. Sparks licked the belly of the bronze bull and began to ever so slowly heat the surface. She pawed around in the tight confines, searching for any reprieve from the scalding heat all around her as the metal grew hot like it had been left out in the sun on a summer's day. Please, God, let me out of this thing. It hurts. The host seemed to breathe in her pain as if stealing a moment's indulgence. Now that there is no doubt about where you are, my dear, let us proceed to the second question. He switched to his next card. Did you believe in God in the end? Of course. She pled her case as if she was being tried in court. My entire life, every day I gave to the poor, helped the sick, did whatever I could to honor him. I'm afraid you misunderstood my question. I asked, did you believe in him at the end? The very moment your pitiful little life was snuffed out. I always believed I'd never forsake him. Yes, I know. You lived a good and holy life, didn't you? He cackled. But what of the very end? You and your little husband were so excited to deliver your first little baby boy, but oh tragedy. It all went wrong, didn't it? Your precious little boy didn't make it through childbirth, and you followed closely behind. That whole business was the botched pregnancy. It was... what did you call it? Ah, yes, a test of faith. And I'm afraid you failed. In your final moments, you watched the light fade from your child eyes, and you seemed, wisely, in my humble opinion, that no kind and loving God would allow something like that to happen. He laughed. Funny how after a lifetime of dutiful service, all it takes is one little mistake at the end to bring you here, to us. I'd never seen such depths of despair in a person's eyes, such emptiness. Like with every word he'd been scooping out another piece of her until she was hollow. And then that buzzer roared again, more shrill than ever, and I could barely see her little window through the smoke and flames. The belly of the bull was turning orange in places, and I could hear her flesh start to sizzle like meat on a grill. There are no words for the noises she made. No words at all. And our last, final question, he continued. What were your last words to your poor, beloved Jackson? I love you. I called out the answer. Bloody fingerprints stained the TV screen from me slamming my hands against it. As I screamed the answer over and over. At some point I forgot that there was ever a question. I was just screaming it at her as if hoping that she could hear it, that it could bring her a modicum of comfort in that place. The buzzer sounded again. I couldn't bring myself to look. All I could hear was the roaring of the bull and the steam rising from its bronze nostrils. The curtain fell, silence drowned the sound. The host dropped all pretense that he hadn't been speaking directly to me. Now, Jackson, you might just be one of my new favorite audience members the show had ever had. I know this must have been hard for you, but if you'll just stay tuned, I have one more show I know you're certain to love. I didn't bother to touch the remote. After all, nothing could be worse than what I'd just seen, right? Wrong. Horror racked me as the curtain rose and I saw the man chained to a chair, I pulled away like a caveman witnessing fire, cringing and stuttering, face wet with sweat. It was the sort of fear that worked its way into your bones like a bad chill, that left you shaking, teeth chattering. It was me. An older me, sure, but not by much. 10 years, maybe. A gaunt and hollow version of me, one twisted by 10 years of depression and hard drugs. But it was unmistakable. His eyes widened as he recognized the host. Oh, God, please no. It can't be. Let me out of this chair, you. Come now, we wouldn't want to use the Lord's name in vain, would we? I mean, that would be a sin. The host laid a hand on the other me's shoulder. It may have been a few years since you watched our program, but I'm sure you remember the rules, don't you, old friend? The other me was wordless, on the verge of hyperventilating, just as I was. The host was giddy with delight. Now, our first and only question is one I'm sure our viewer will be very interested in. What sins exactly do you think landed you here? The other me tried to speak, but the words caught in his throat. I could see it in his eyes. The years of self-destruction, the bitter hopelessness, the whirlpool of nihilism and vice and decay, the suffocating depths of a man, the darkness. How could he put it into words? The sound of the buzzer was like a pig's squeal. I'm afraid that our viewer is going to have to figure that out for himself. In the meantime, your punishment? Well, we wouldn't want to spoil anything. The curtains slowly began to fall just as a couple other of those black, grotesque monstrosities emerged from the darkness. The curtain covered them all before I could get a good look at their obscene, twisted, asymmetrical figures. All I could hear was the crunching, the sound of skin tearing like paper, the screaming that went on for longer and louder than a human throat or vocal cords could endure. The image and audio were beginning to distort, glitch, burn away. The tapes were physically melting as they played. My VCR was starting to overheat, sparks pouring from its front panel. The host's voice jumped around in tone, his voice fading into the static blur as the tapes bubbled and boiled and distorted. But, my friends, I'm afraid that concludes tonight's episode of our show. So, with a final farewell to our dear, beloved viewer Jackson, just before the image melted away, the camera seemed to jump forward until his face filled the screen, his eyes piercing into mine as he cackled in that sing-song voice. See you soon. Hey guys, my friend has gone missing and this is the only thing he's left me. I wanted to post this here. I recently tried to visit an old college friend. His name is Jason. I got lucky and had a work-related event in a city near his town. I would talk to him quite a lot over the phone, trying to maintain regular communication. However, this stopped just after we had called and agreed to meet. I just couldn't reach him anymore. Once I was done with the conference, I drove over to his place. That's all that was left for me to do after my last calls failed again to reach him. I rang the doorbell and there was no response. I desperately tried calling again. Nothing. I decided to call the police and ask them to check on my friend. They would at least be able to get through the front door without getting arrested for it. Well, the authorities came and went. There was still no sign of my friend. One of the cops, however, handed me a crumpled letter. I gave them my name, and seeing how the message from my friend started, I could quickly guess why they gave it to me. I've read it over and over again. I can't make sense of it. That is where I hope you can help me. The cops ended up launching a proper investigation after I called them again 3 days later after no sign of my friend. There was no sign of him or any break-in. Everything was in order. They said they would keep looking, even try the lake just outside of town. The suggestion made me shudder. However, it's in their hands now. I called everyone I could who might know something. My friend is still nowhere to be seen. Give this a read and let me know what you think. Here's his letter to me. Please. My name. I know you are likely looking for me, and please don't stop. I am here. I'm still here. I got this. And then in crossed out, it says painting art. Abomination of a German cabin in a birch forest. I just hung it up over my bed. As you know, Allison had just left me and was taking a break from work. I found it at a yard sale. I don't know. Just picked it up because it reminded me of a similar cabin my Oma had back in the fatherland. I guess the nostalgia that came when seeing it made me feel just a little less alone, but I didn't know. As soon as I hung it up, something, and then crossed out, it says itched at the back of my neck. Just felt plain wrong. I had just bought it and something was off. I looked at it. It wasn't the placement. And then crossed out again, it says. Actually, it looked quite good on the wall. It felt like it expanded the room. So I kept staring at it. Staring and staring and staring. There had to be something I hadn't seen before. I even forgot to blink every now and again. Only when I had to go eat, sleep, or go to the bathroom I would avert my eyes. The very existence the picture was supposed to help me alleviate had only become worse and worse. I was basically living out of my bedroom. Now nothing more than a rectangular cell with pastel wallpaper, a wooden Swedish bed and closets, and my desk. I was so thankful for you calling me when you did, reminding me of your visit. I thought I was going nuts. Your voice really helped me. Finally, I wasn't feeling so alone anymore. But the painting was still there. And then in crossed out it says mocking. Reminding me of what your calls were only temporarily fixing. Then it happened. It was the day when you told me about your plans to come to the city. You were my escape. You could have helped me trash the painting and just not be alone. I didn't have the strength. And crossed out it says, I lost whatever was left. See, I had begun to believe it was just me like always. You know what I mean. At least obsession was good back in college when fixing your code. Before I say more, I want you to know that I'm just lonely and sad. And then in crossed out it says I'm gently losing my sanity. Nothing more, nothing darker. I need you to understand that since you read this, I don't want you to give up hope. I need you to do something. Anything. My door vanished. Not the front door, and not any other door. And it didn't just vanish as if pulled from its hinges. Where there was once my white bedroom door was now just that blue pastel wallpaper, disgustingly clean just like the rest. I know. Of course, I barely noticed, staring at the painting all the time. It was only when I needed to go to the bathroom that I almost flat out walked into the wall where the door used to be. First there was disbelief, then there was horror, and then came vindication. If you can believe it, I felt vindicated. For once, justified my obsession. Of course, it had to be the painting. It's not like I get trapped like this regularly. But you know what's worse than being alone in a room with the only company being a gaudy painting? Being alone in a room with a painting that has just sealed off your exit. It wasn't like I was going to take it anytime soon. I was waiting for you. Given everything else, I have to say I took it quite well. It surprised me. But it also gave me renewed energy. I had to keep looking. The secret had to be somewhere, but I also knew I had to go eat or go to the bathroom. This painting wasn't going to beat me. My room was my prison to make, not the pictures. The next stop was obviously the window. I looked outside and a relieved sigh escaped my lips. I could see my neighbor's house. As you will come to see, the room is not placed at any great height. It might strain my knees and scrape my skin, but I would survive. An escape was there for now. I felt a tingle at the back of my neck. Something was wrong. I darted around. My eyes fixated on the painting again. This time I felt it in my bones. There was something. I thought I saw movement on the two-dimensional layers of paint that made up the picture. It was only for a split second, but I swear I saw something. I grabbed my chair, placed it facing the painting, and planted myself securely. The light outside was getting dimmer and dimmer, but this time I wouldn't just give up. My bedroom seemed to contort around me, the walls twisting and turning to make the painting the only vanishing point in my line of sight. I wasn't losing sight of it. Pretty soon I was doused in darkness. My eyes struggled to adjust, but they got there eventually. Licking my lips, I leaned in closer. Then crossed out, it says maybe it was just the moonlight. Maybe the moonlight helped me, but I saw it again. It moved between the far-off bony whites of the forest in the background. Again. It was for a split second. If I had blinked, I would have missed it, but I swear to you, I saw something move. What it was, I couldn't say, just that it moved. I clapped my hands in triumph, but this time my order of emotions was reversed. First validation, then horror. Something had just moved. In the moonlight of my room and the sunny rays of the painting, my obsession changed its nature. Fear took over. Fear of missing it moving again. Fear of it getting closer. How many times had it traversed the painting when I wasn't looking? That's why I'm writing this letter, documenting what's happening. I have become fixed in the room, in a constant battle with something I don't even know what it is. I can't call you anymore. I need to keep looking. When you read this, I should still be here, but I don't know anymore. You can't come fast enough. I am scared. I grabbed the sheet as fast as I could from the desk next to me, trying to minimize eye contact with the painting. I almost fell to the floor, my little room suddenly regaining its dimensions. And crossed out it says it felt bigger, emptier, but that was just my imagination. I was not a prisoner, but a warden now. I wrote everything up until now. I'm sorry if it's hard to read. My hands are shaking and I am trying to both focus on this letter and the picture all at once. I don't know how long I have been sitting here. It's still dark. I saw movement, but only as it vanished behind another skeletal tree. I hate myself for being right. It was closer. I will throw this letter out of the window if I have to. I will jump out of the window if I have to. There it is again. God save me. I could make out a shape. It was walking. Please come find me. Break down the door if you... It's coming through the trees. It's behind the cabin. I see an arm. Help. I'm going to make a run for it. I have to. God help me. I just have to work up the courage to turn away and open the window. Letter in my hand. One last glance. It's here. There is a face staring at me. Just a face. Human, looking at me with sunken eyes and colorless skin through the paint. It's covering the entire canvas. Its world behind it. Finally looking directly at me. It doesn't blink. It doesn't move. It just stares. I have to go now. I am not alone anymore. Letter ends here. The last lines were the hardest to read, but Not just because of the handwriting becoming exponentially worse, but of course also because of what was written. I got a chance to go into his bedroom. There was a door where he said there wasn't. However, there was also a painting hanging right over his bed. There was a chair in the middle of the room and the window was open. I walked out as soon as I could, trying not to stare too long at the picture of a beautiful cabin in the birch forest.